What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? You are on the sidelines with the Sideline Guys for a very special MMA edition of the show. Back again, once again, with my favorite co host to talk about all things terrible split decisions in MMA. My guy, Sean Negron. How's it going, brother?
I usually like split decisions, but when they're actually warranted, not when I felt like some fighters got robbed. Some splits didn't even need to happen. It was a wild card for sure. From the first fight all the way to the last fight, this was one of the more strange ones, and I think we paid for it for sure. But
It
besides
was
that, I'm
weird.
good.
It started out promising, right? We got off the runway and it was looking nice, and then we hit some foul turbulence, but we'll get there. Hope
Canada did not feel that way.
not at all. Yeah, the momentum, the air was sucked out of that building for sure come the title fights, but once
Yes.
again, we'll get there when we get there, god damn it. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure that you're following the brand at OTS Media Co. on all social media platforms, OTS Media on YouTube, and you could also check me out at Negron MMA on Twitter as well as TikTok. And you could also find me at Instagram at Chris Negron _. Sean, why don't you remind the people where they can find you?
Yes. Oh, I haven't done this in a while. You can find me on Twitter at SeanNegron26. And bsreports.org is my website. You can find me there if you want to get involved in the sports industry in any way, writing, podcasting, whatever it is. You shoot me a message and I will help you get started.
Hell yeah, man. That always welcomes you with open arms, even if at this point you don't deserve that invitation because you're a piece of shit. But hey, uh, the man is here to spark future talent and recruits for some awesome minds in all sports across the board. So reach out. But with all that being said, let's dive right into this, man, because we've got a long slate of fights. First up, your favorite fight of the night since when the whole thing was dropped, baby. Jimmy Flick wins via arm triangle choke at 117 of round one. How did we not see this coming, right?
Yeah, I don't know. This is and it's funny because it's exactly what I predicted to happen with what Gordon's game plan, the constant pressure, you know, like what I was saying to you in the preview show is I knew Gordon was just going to go full guns blazing and just constantly push the pressure so that Flick is on the back foot most of the time, and but it leaves Gordon open to possible, either body shots, overhands, or getting taken down. And I honestly am curious as to what I was thinking there. Maybe I thought I probably said like the power would be too much, but this was a fight where I should have just realized from the beginning that this was going to be a long night because I as soon as the fight started, I was like, there's no way that Gordon could keep this up. This pressure is crazy. Yes, you can give him that first round, but it's too much. He looked gassed out after the fourth minute, and you saw Flick starting to turn the tides, and then he landed what he calls the Von Flick, but that was uh that was a very weird fight. I wish I would have stuck to my guns and taken Jimmy.
I feel that. I feel that. It was so strange too because I feel like it was just meant to be that way given the odds and mentioning the odds before we even broke down the fight and how it just didn't make any sense. But one of those things, right? One of those beats where you saw it coming, but you didn't pull the trigger, and then once it all gets laid out, you're like, damn it, you just feel salty. Should have went the right way. But damn, we had a lot of moments like that this night, so I think we might as well just keep moving on because
Whoa,
the
whoa, whoa, whoa,
comeuppance just
whoa!
continues.
I can't believe you're passing by this right now. This is a heartbreaking moment for you, and I know you were very upset. How do you feel? And it seems like this is what was happening, but it seemed like Malcolm retired. How do you feel about that?
I'm gonna be real with you, brother. Um, this was the first time I cried tonight, and it was about six more times after
Oh,
this.
for sure.
And all of them were just pure excruciating pain
Yes.
after this one. It was not sadness. Sad moment in the Negron household for sure.
Hmm.
But he'll be back at a gas station near you very shortly. Very fucking
I
shortly.
can't
So
wait.
no, 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 no disrespect. Shout out to Malcolm Gordon, someone that never shied away from any fucking big fight in his career. And honestly, this was, if you can't win a fight like this, right? I feel you, brother. I feel you. We could leave it at that. Next up, I wasn't even going to give that any airtime because the legend Malcolm Gordon laying down the gloves isn't exactly first page news. But next up, we've got Jasmine Jasadavicius winning via Darce choke at 4:21 of round 3 versus Priscilla Cachoeira. This was a fight that really much reminded me of that Valentina Shevchenko beatdown. Just how at this point in your UFC career you still don't sell out for trying to escape, at least, right? At least fucking try. It's the same slow inevitable death, right? You might as well fucking give it your all and try to get out of that position, because I thought, especially even in round 3, there was some dicey moments there on the feet where you could see the toll of all of this constant aggression from Jasadavicius. It's hard to maintain that across 3 rounds. And honestly, I felt like this was one of those weird WMMA moments where I feel like this fight should have and could have been stopped multiple times in the first and in the second. And then obviously she ends up getting it done in the third with a pretty nice Darce after trying a couple damn submissions before that. This was obviously just a showcase, right? We talked about this being a showcase as well, and obviously she had to avoid those dangerous moments, and she did that. But can't feel any other way than good about the performance. But I also can't say I was necessarily fully impressed. I thought the control obviously on top was impressive and something that's definitely not easy to do. But all things considered, kind of felt like she should have got her out there a little bit earlier. Am I being too critical?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It was I kind of went into it exactly what you said in the preview show, that you were surprised that this fight was even still happening, that what's her name? Of course not, but
Cachoeira.
Priscilla was even still in the UFC. And after I was like, oh, it could be like this should be some sort of revenge for Canada, and it kind of felt like that, even though it had nothing to do with it. This was so dominating that it definitely was a showcase, and you could clearly see the different levels in this division, and that was exactly what I expected. Just definitely not as brutal as it had become. I really thought the fight was going to get stopped in round 2. It felt like every round was a 10-8, and even the third round, if it had gone all the way to the end, it was as ugly as it gets, as one-sided as it gets. You got dropped in the first round with the takedowns. She got flattened out. I thought it was going to be over then. Round 2, she was getting, Jasmine was getting pieced up a little bit, but then that straight right hand drops her again. She never gets back up, and that's something we said in the preview show, that if she gets knocked down, most likely she's never getting back up. And that's exactly what happened. That was probably one of the top 5, one of the most lopsided women's MMA fights I've ever seen. And for almost 15 minutes, that was probably up there. That was embarrassing, and probably the last time I see Priscilla in the UFC. Wow, a great showing for Jasmine for sure.
Hey, I was having Mario Yamasaki flashbacks though. Like, just stop the fucking fight. If this
Oh, for
was
sure.
men's MMA, this would have ended long ago. I guess because they don't see the visceral reaction from the strikes. But this was a fucking life-changing beating,
Yep.
right? Like, don't sleep on that. There was a lot of shots here that were just fucking unnecessary after a certain point, because, like you said, once we were locked down in those control positions, it was just big bank take little bank, right? There was no movement towards any saving grace or silver lining. Just an
Dude,
absolute
we were going into the third
nasty.
round 228-4. Like I don't know if I've ever seen that. I think that's the biggest margin of difference in women's MMA history. It ended
What? Say that again.
the
What?
the the stats. It was 228 strikes landed to 4.
Oh shit! I thought you were talking about the scoring for a second. I was like,
No, no,
what?
no. It was 10-8. Everyone had 10-8 the first 2 rounds except for one, where one judge had a 10-7, which I have not seen a
Yeah.
10-7
Sal
in
Diamato,
a while.
shout
Yeah,
out.
and yeah, that was bad. It ended 303 to 22. That's bad. That gets you off the UFC roster pretty quickly. And not saying that in a mean way, but it's just better off for you. That was a life changing fight, like you said, for sure.
Mhm. If there's anything though to definitely be excited for from this fight from Yasmin, it's the cardio. Like to be able to hold that up for 3 rounds, and it got dicey in some spaces, but to be able to get a choke like that after all of the things she was forced to do by the referee, let's make that clear. Uh, Shout out to Yasmin for staying the course there and a difficult challenge for some prospects. So next up, we've got this the saddest moment on the card. And after this one, I knew, right? As soon as this one ended, I was like, yeah, we're fucked. Like this is gonna be all of tonight. We're just gonna get wrecked. Sam Patterson wins via rear naked choke at 2 minutes and 3 seconds of round number one versus Johan Linus. Got him sent straight out to UFC too, right? I'm surprised we still haven't heard about Priscilla. Who knows, right? We might get a Zombie Girl return for the next two Hellscapes back to back. But for sure, Johan is gone. Bars. Um, I'm not gonna lie to you. For all the reasons that we gave out on the show, I still feel the same way. I think, given the circumstances, that we could have watched the same fight happen, and I honestly might end up fucking around and picking Johan again. I think the what surprised me about this fight um, was the lack of urgency from Johan. It felt like, I mean, respect to Sam Patterson. The guy looks huge at welterweight, which is crazy to think about. Um, but even in those small amount of exchanges they did have on the feet, his head is right there, up in a swivel, to be touched up, and the way he retreats by pulling back reminds me a lot about one. Damn it! How dare I do this? It's right there. Stefan Struve, just in range, but because they're so big, they feel like they're not, and they're just hoping that they're not able to get enough burst to touch the chin. I still am not super high on Sam Patterson, but it's very clear once he gets into his phases, right? Once he's where he wants to be, he can be a dominant fighter, and he went out there and did it. I thought once he got the back, the progressions, and how slick he was able to lock everything up looked very, very good. Don't get me wrong, but you got to look at the complete picture here, man. And it just felt weird to see those things, and for Johan not to be able to capitalize. And as soon as things started going bad for him, it kind of felt like he just gave up out there.
Bro, that was I was kind of embarrassed, to be honest with you. Like I was going into that with Johan thinking like, all right, I thought he was going to use the leg kicks to kind of create the distance, like I was talking about in the preview show. And they were talking about, oh, he's got a new coach, new camp. He's trying new things. He thinks he's gonna restart his career and blah blah blah. And I felt like he froze. Like I felt like he was the moment just over. I don't know if it overcame him or the fight started and like his brain just didn't put it together that this was like, here we go, because he just looked not a step slow. He looked 5 steps slow. And I felt as soon as Sam got the back, it was like it's like watching those YouTube videos of like when two guys fight each other in the street and then you realize the other guy has MMA training and all of a sudden he just takes the back and he chokes a dude out and you just you got the fans just like, what the hell? Like I felt as soon as Sam got the
Hey,
back, it was
hey, hey,
over.
I'll do you one better. Catch me on this side of the internet. This is like one of those videos where they throw a fucking stag beetle in there against a praying mantis, right? We get to see, well, once things go bad, they go bad real
Oh
fucking
yeah.
quick. And shout out to those channels out there giving us the fucking prehistoric battles we need to see in the Amazon between all these different bugs. Trust me, there's a whole dark side of the internet with these battles to the death that we get to watch for our entertainment. But sorry, I had to throw that in.
Yeah.
I don't know where the fuck I'm coming from with this
No, no,
incident.
and I agree with you. That was so weird. It was just something where as soon as he got the back, I was still wondering where if Johan was going to start this fight or not. But then I felt like as soon as he got the back, it took less than 25 seconds for him to get the back and then get the choke. It just felt so like an amateur fight. It just felt like a professional fighting like a sparring partner, and like like you're learning, just going through the moves and wrestling and jujitsu, and taking the bag and taking him down, and I really was wondering what the hell happened there. And I think that's why the UFC saw the same thing I saw, and was like, yeah, no, that's not a UFC fighter. That's an amateur fighter. So let's cut ties as quickly as we can. And it was the last fight in his contract anyway. So that was as that was the best way for you if you were like, yeah, nah, I'm just gonna fumble the bag real quick, make sure I'm out of the UFC, retire, go do something else with my career because this ain't it for me. I don't like it. And that was the best way to do that. Get your check and just go home. Never
That's a
be
new
seen
one.
again.
That's the best way to fumble the bag. That's I've never even thought about it that way. But goddamn, you ain't wrong, Sean. You ain't wrong. Next up, our main event of the night, if you ask if you ask me. Jillian Robertson wins via TKO ground and pound at 3:12 of round two versus Poliana Viana. I think obviously the dominance of this sequence gives a lot of false impressions about the overall outlook of the fight. I thought this was a very fun fight, very tense fight. Went back and forth early on, but obviously once Jillian got her in the spot she needed to, was able to ride her out early and get into some good positions as well. But once it came time to turn things on in round two, when she found those spots again, just vicious as always. So shout out to Jillian Robertson doing it for the Canadian fans. The only two that won on the entire night were both the women. How did you feel about this exciting fight for us, of course?
Another one where I felt like we both called it. We even had a little bit of a debate as if Viana got taken down. You know, we were saying that she probably wasn't going to get back up, and then we were talking about, well, what if she stuffs 2 or 3 takedowns, and then we could see a difference. And I did feel that way. I'm not going to lie. I think after round one, I think Viana had stuffed like 1 or 2, and you could see Robertson was a little gassed, and I was like, ah, shit, I gotta tell Chris he's right. Here we go. I did not need that yet, and but Robertson, I really liked how she came out in round two, and that was an incredible performance. I think it's exactly the way we thought it was going to go, and it was perfect. I think that was everything the Canadian fans needed. I'd say they didn't know yet that it was about to get a lot worse for him, but at the end of the night, they can look back and be like, hey, Robertson, she did her thing. And that was a great performance. I think it puts her tied for second now. I think in submissions in her division, or in women's UFC history, something like that. And she's incredible. She's got a lot of records she's gonna break here, and she's still got a couple more fights left in her UFC career for sure.
And a real underrated improvement that I think isn't getting enough shine. Shout out to Dean Thomas. Uh, Once she's getting these control positions now too, yes, she's hunting submissions, but she's hunting damage, and she's figuring out how to anchor herself in positions to further that damage. And really loving those applications in her game. I mean, just think about it. One Dean Thomas just started working with Sean Brady. So there's some exciting things to consider when we see the project that he's been able to make a beautiful MMA fighter in Jillian Robertson. But next up, we've got the most controversial split decision of the prelim card, because goddamn, there's a whole bunch more coming up. Ramon Tavares wins via split decision 29-28 times 2, 28-29 versus Serhi Saidi. I'll start off by saying this: live when I watched it initially, I agreed with the decision, and I think it was because I was sort of biased, right? I think I was riding the highs here, even though we both picked Serhi. Um, Being the guy that made more of a case for Tavares, I kind of felt it. But then when I watched it back, I was like, yeah, man, this one doesn't feel right. The conundrum on commentary with Dominic Cruz going back and forth talking about the damage, the
Damage,
blood,
damage.
the damage. God damn the damage. But cuts don't continuously score. But for some reason, he was so fixated on this in this fight. Funny enough, it ends up bubbling over, and later on in the night, John Anik puts a fucking kibosh to the whole thing. He's like, no, that is not how the rules work in the most professional way possible. But it's just real quick. I just gotta say before we get into the meat and potatoes of what happened in the fight, I just get so frustrated with Dominic Cruz always finding a way to argue with somebody. Like
Always.
even if it's a good night and the chemistry is feeling good, there's always a way for him to engage in some sort of verbal battle with anyone
Yep.
that's willing to take the mantle. But as far as the fight goes, I thought both guys really showed a lot. I thought as far as who had the more damaging moments of this fight, I think that it's fair to say you could say that's Tavares. I think obviously Serhi, his output in the second half of the fight after overcoming his hardest round, I thought uh, was the reasons why I gave it to him when I watched it the second time. I thought it was pretty clear. But live versus having these rose-colored glasses, right? I think it's important to make these distinctions. There was a couple of fights where I felt the same way, right? Where I'm initially feeling a certain way, and then I watch it back again, and I feel clearly the opposite. So it's hard not to get caught up in the ebbs and flows and the emotions of these fights. And I didn't mind it. I think this is a close enough fight that even watching it back, you can make the argument, right? It's not like you watch it back and you're like, no, this is clear for Serhi. It's a close enough fight that you could see it. But second watch, I think it was pretty clear. What are you thinking about this one?
I think it kind of I knew it was going to be a close fight, and that's what I said. And I felt that I thought Saidi was going. It was the better fighter, and I thought that the only chance that Tavares really had was if his gas tank held up a little longer than usual because of the fact he missed weight by so much. And I felt like I'm not saying that that played a big factor. I did feel though that having 4 pounds up on the guy going into weight cut and then uh, going out there and performing, it's definitely an advantage for you. But I do got to give Tavares the credit, man. His boxing was incredible that first round, even that second round, and that's what I think gave him the fight. Was his first round? He won that first round. His
The
boxing was
only clear round
yeah.
of the fight.
His boxing was unbelievable. He was piecing him up. He had that great overhand right, the body shots. Like he was really
On
messing him up.
fire.
And Saidi was kind of like abusing the legs, was kicking the legs, was kicking the body, trying to keep that distance, and was like taking the long road with this fight. I felt like the second round was close. Tavares started really early in round two again with piecing him up, and got Saidi stumbling. He broke his nose. There was clear, like in that moment. I think it was like 3:30, 3:45, a minute into that second round where you already saw Saidi stumble, you saw the nose break, and you were like, okay, Tavares is going to win round two. But I felt like Saidi turned it around, and I think for those final 3.5, 4 minutes, he won that round with just staying alive, one, but also piecing him up now. Like you saw the tide change, you saw the cardio difference, and I thought Saidi had won round two, but I think because the damage that had taken over in that beginning, well, all of round one, and that flooded into round two, it almost looked like Tavares won those first two rounds. And then Saidi, I felt in the third round, won that round. I felt like Tavares was so backed up against the cage, just running around the outside, was trying to land some combinations, but was missing. And I felt like Saidi was finally comfortable now. Now he was piecing him up. And it wasn't as damaging as Tavares' shots, but you could clearly tell that Tavares had nothing for him. Like he didn't know what to do. Like you saw the distance, you saw just clear discrepancies in their game there. And I felt Saidi had done enough to absolutely dominate round three. So that I think the big one was looking into round two. And I think because he broke his nose, and I do agree with Cruz there. I do agree that for that fight, I felt because he broke his nose and made it really bloody looking, and the fact that he had him stumbling early, that it looked like, all right, he's definitely going to win round two. And that because Saidi didn't do that in return. Like, yeah, you saw him, clip him, and you saw Tavares' knees drop for like a split second, but it
That
wasn't
was weird.
something
Yeah.
where you were like, all right, I think you got to give it to Saidi here. What a complete turnaround. Even though I felt that way, I thought and I guess majority did too. I think the judges were already all right. Tavares won 1 and 2, Saidi won 3.
Yeah, I think Saidi could have benefited from going for takedowns earlier, especially in round two. I don't know if it was a cardio thing because getting wrecked like that in round one, I'm sure isn't easy on the breath for sure. But
Yeah,
uh, get that started early. I feel like he just would have took him out of a lot of danger, right? But it is what it is. Next up, sucks for your dynasty team.
thanks.
We've got Sean Woodson winning via split decision 29-28 times 2, 28-29. I'm biased. So I'm interested to hear how you felt about this fight because obviously I picked Sean Woodson coming into this one. Thought it kind of played out a little bit the way I laid it out, but how you feeling about this featherweight tilt?
No, this
One of
was
the better fights of the night.
yeah.
Gotta say.
Defensively, man, this was one of my favorite fights. Like this was awesome. Like as much as I was waiting for for Jourdain to finally take over, and every time I didn't pick him, he wins, and now that I pick him, he loses. I'm never picking again for a Jourdain fight. I'm sorry. I'm omitting. I don't even care. It's
Flip a coin.
yeah, it's but this was an incredible performance. I was actually a little surprised in how one-sided it felt. Definitely wasn't split. I don't know what the judges saw there, and it
Mhm.
was just wild. That referee was definitely interesting with the finale of hearing the names, and I felt bad, man. That's got to be so rough to have your hand raised thinking the ref heard your name, and then to find out you lose. Like that's brutal, bro. That's as brutal as it gets because you just went in a war, you didn't think you win, and then you get the hope from the ref that you won, just to be told, "Ha ha ha, you lost" by Daniel Cormier on a microphone. Like that's pretty rough. But at the same time, like Woodson was way better in that fight. The defense was crazy. You saw Jourdain through trying the same tactics over and over, pushing him against the cage. As soon as the clinch ended, doing that spinning heel kick, like he didn't know how to get to him. Woodson's defense was so good that every time Jourdain got close, he just couldn't capitalize. He couldn't do anything, and that was a masterful performance defensively by Woodson, and I love stuff like that. I love performances where you could just see a fighter right in front of your eyes on TV. You just looking at them, and they just have a big question mark over their head, like they have no idea what to do. The height difference was there. He couldn't take him down. He couldn't get close. It was just one of those where he's literally like begging his coaches in his ear to figure out something. The coaches are dead silent. There was nothing. Nobody could figure out anything. And that's the shit I love to see. Obviously everyone loves to see the Chandler Gaethje fights where people are just beating the shit out of each other. But there are times, especially like this fight, where you just love to see some incredible defense, like we saw with Strickland Adesanya, and you just see just a big question mark over one's head, and you have no idea what they don't know. They have no idea what they're gonna do. You have no idea what's next, and that was an incredible performance by Woodson. Obviously, it hurts me in the pick'ems, but it is what it is. It was a brutal night for me. It's all around.
Hey, it wasn't a great night for me either. We'll get to that at the end, but yeah, man, I thought this one played out largely how I thought it would. Shout out to Charles Woodson though, because he made this a very tough fight too. One of my favorite parts of this fight early on was Charles Jourdain was
Yeah, I
able to
was like
push him
Charles
back and then
Woodson.
start
What?
landing. Yeah, sorry, I don't know what's going on here. We're
Hey,
fusing them together. It's
yeah,
11-13 over here, right? We got the Patara earrings in. We're
incredible
fusing
NFL
these.
player,
Yeah,
incredible
yeah,
Hall
it's
of Fame.
amazing. Yeah, yeah, definitely for sure. Fuck. Maybe that's where my head is at, right? I'm looking
Probably,
forward to the championship game, god damn it. But
yes.
Sean Woodson did such a good job, I thought, keeping him on the outside. But there was a point early on in this fight where Charles Jourdain was doing a very good job at pushing him back and landing on that sort of outer edge. And Woodson made some really good adjustments where he stopped moving back entirely and instead started feinting into range. And that really threw off Charles Jourdain for the rest of the fight, I thought. Forced him to be in a position where if he's on the back foot now, he's sort of rethinking his entire thought process. And then Sean Woodson will throw a couple jabs off, circle out, and then now he has the whole cage behind him too, right? So there was a lot of cool moments, like you said, between these guys. I thought Charles Jourdain never gave up, right? This was not one-sided, oh, he's just getting his ass beat. He was definitely out there trying a lot of things, but like you said, he just couldn't seem to find the right range for long enough to catch him. But Sean Woodson's a great prospect, man. I love watching how dialed in he is during these exchanges, especially with his feints. Does a lot of weird shit with his face, right? I'm sure, to get people to try to throw at him, and then is just there to counter you no matter how far away you think you are.
Yeah, he had the. I loved his little like he. I don't know what you call that style, but to constantly be
52
moving.
blocks, 52 blocks.
There you go. The constant movement, and that's it works. Sometimes it works, you know. Obviously, you could get caught sometimes, but you know, it definitely messed up Jourdain the entire fight. I felt it. It was just. I thought Jourdain was gonna be a completely different fighter, and I know that sounds super bland, but I thought Jourdain was gonna put the pressure on Woodson to force Woodson the exact opposite role where Woodson, I didn't feel like is the greatest offensively, but is pretty good defensively. And I thought Jourdain was going to take it to him and get the takedown, and then you know go to work there. But it felt like all of Canada had completely uh, fumbled the bag. That's the second time I've said that, but just completely fell off, and that was just another example right there.
Sheesh. And then we got another weird fight to talk about here. We've got Garrett Armfield winning via unanimous decision 29-28 times 3 versus Brad Katona. This one hurt a lot for my dynasty team and for both of our picks, if I'm not mistaken. I'll let you take the reins on this one. No, I'm just kidding. I got a lot to say about this fucking fight right here, okay? I still, to this moment, think that Brad Katona did enough to win this fight in
Mm.
round two. I thought round two was where everything really hinged, and I just thought he was the busier fighter. I thought Garrett Armfield did much better, obviously, than anticipated. But I just don't get what it is, man. They don't put enough respect on offensive grappling, in my opinion. That's all I got to say about this fight. This should have at least, I mean, I know this is a stupid thing to say, right? Because you can't score a fight to be a split decision. You have to, you can't say it's something against me tight. I scored it a split decision. What the fuck does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. That does not make sense. In order for a split decision to happen, one person needs to think you won while the others doesn't, right? We didn't get that, but I thought this was close enough where there should have been some justifiable discussion on that, right? It should have, if there was a split, it wouldn't have been controversial, in my opinion. It was that close of a fight. And when I heard that it was unanimous, I thought it kind of doubled down on, yeah, then it's definitely Brad Katona's fight. And then Garrett Armfield ends up getting it on the road. God damn it. Am I just a salty dog here? Am I sitting at the salty splatoon? What's going on?
No, you know, I to keep it short, I felt that Katona had done enough to win round two, and then I felt that Armfield's pressure and I don't know if it was more of his cardio or just felt that Armfield had definitely slowed down a lot in round three, and maybe this is just how I saw it. It was just I felt that I didn't think Katona was winning the fight the whole time, but I did feel that you could make a case. And I see what you're saying with the split decision, right? You could see a judge giving it to Katona. But I did feel it was a lot closer, but I know it was 29-28 and like that's as close as you're going to get, but I could definitely see a case where one, maybe even two judges give it to Katona. So I'm kind of on this in the same boat as you, but I think it felt as if Armfield had done enough again early that he just over and takes the 2 out of 3 right off the rip, and it was one of those where I was hoping for a little bit more what's the word, not pressure, but I just was wishing for more, and I felt that it started off slower than I wanted it to for Katona, and I think that's what evidently cost him. I thought it was going to be a closer fight, but I still like Katona in his future fights. I think he's going to be not, I should say special, but I think he's still got a chip on his shoulder, and I think he's still got a pretty good future in the UFC.
I think these last two fights are weird examples of two different ways that point to we need to figure out how to fix the scoring system in
Yeah,
MMA. Because if we look at the last fight with the Sean Woodson fight, I think if we had a scoring system, let's say hypothetically, where you giving out a total of 100 points between the two, I think we could end up with a 70-30 decision for Sean Woodson. When this fight feels like a fifty-five
yeah,
forty-five, it's closer than perceived, but yet this one was unanimous and the other one was a split in a direction that made no sense at all. So it's like, yes, I get the merit of judging each round individually as its own fight, so that obviously the momentum of previous things aren't factored in. But when you consider the whole of the fight, one of them felt way more one sided, despite that one being the one that ends up being a split decision, right? It just feels like these fighters in close fights get like not robbed, but they're not getting a accurate representation of the fight they put on paper by the numbers that are read on that scorecard.
yeah. Exactly, exactly. I felt like that was the kind of the mo of this card. There were two or three fights like you just said before. There were like two or three fights just like that where it wasn't like maybe you don't change the outcome of who wins the fight in some of the fights, but I felt like it was a lot closer than what the cards suggested. And sometimes stats don't give you the full on picture, and I felt like that was definitely the case in most of these, and I should say in some of these fights for sure.
For sure. Next up, we've had the Sean Negron Bowl. This is the all dynasty team matchup here. Mofsar Evloev gets the win via unanimous decision, 29-28 times 3 versus Arnold Allen. This was another fight that had some controversy, obviously hinging on that third round with those knees. But I just wanted you to get the opportunity to talk about what you saw with both of these guys, what will look good, what looked bad moving forward. What do you have to shine on about these fighters moving forward as far as what they accomplished here? And do you agree with what Dana's assessment was, which was that this was one of the worst fights he ever seen?
Yeah, I'm still on the fence about that. Like, I don't know. I still feel like Dana was talking about another fight, but because it wasn't that bad. Like, yeah, it wasn't what we expected, and like it didn't suck the air out of the room like he was saying, or something close to that regard. I thought it was a pretty good fight between two incredible fighters at the top of their division. Like, I thought it was gonna be pretty scrappy, but there was a lot of body work, a lot of clinch work. I did like how both of them came in with the body shots, and yeah, those illegal knees. I think it was in round three. I think right round three. I think it was round three.
Hmm.
That definitely questionable, but it was. I love that Movsar just continued to fight on. Like, I love shit like that where you overcome it, and I'm not saying that other fighters don't, but I just love that the fight continued on, and to see it. I gotta give Allen some credit though. Like, I think he was very uncomfortable from the start. The takedowns definitely overwhelmed him. I felt like I think there was a specific moment in round one or round two where he's staring up at the clock for so long that he's just waiting to get out of this. And even when he got back up, he's still looking at the clock and he's trying to listen to his coaches, but he's kind of here comes the train. Sorry, guys, but it's just one of those where I expected Allen to come in more with the Holloway fight tactics where it was he outstrike him and then just outperform him. And yes, the wrestling would take over for Movsar, and maybe Movsar wins with the ground game. But definitely, there were a lot of clinch work here, and I'm not even. I really didn't. It like this whole. It was kind of a setup for what this main card was all about. But I honestly didn't mind this fight. It was out of all of the fights that happened on this main card. I this might be in my top two. Like, it's
Hmm.
I still like everything Mofsar is doing, and he's got. I think he's ranked 5 now or 6. He big jump up for him, and for Allen, like, yeah, that's a brutal. Going from Holloway to Mofsar, it doesn't get
Be tougher than that.
any tougher than that. So I think he still rebounds and finds his way back. I think he figured out, okay, I'm not that 10 fight win streak that I was on means nothing now when you're on a 2 fight losing streak, or you face one of the best boxers in the world and now you face a grappler like this. It's two different games and I didn't win in either. And all right, I got to go back to the drawing board. Like, I still think Arnold is he is probably one of my top 10 favorite fighters to watch, and I think he'll be just fine. I think Movsar's definitely got a very bright future. I think one more win and he could be in the title picture.
Mhm.
I really like his future, and I still really like Allen's as well.
Great shouts all around. I love that you brought up that moment in round two because another football reference. You gotta know your fucking personnel, right? You know who you're fighting here. There's no excuse, in my opinion, for finding yourself in a position that you knew you were gonna end up in throughout your entire training camp, and you're sitting there looking up like, can you guys believe this? We're still here. That does nothing for you. It's terrible optics. Shout out to Eric Nixick. This is just terrible optics, right? Where you're almost like willing the crowd to blood sport you out of this position, brother. It's not happening. Like, this is too dominant of a position for a ref to consider removing someone just because the action isn't sufficient enough for you. I just thought that was a very strange moment in this fight. Kind of felt like he checked out, and then I thought after that moment too, the fans almost checked out too. Um, and made it for even weirder moment in round three when that all took place with the knees, where honestly, like Mark Goddard saw it. It was Mark Goddard, right? I hope it was. Like he
Yeah,
saw it in that exchange. I thought all of those were legal until the last one. Like he
yeah,
was
me
doing
too.
such a good job of pulling him up. So I was glad that he only took away the position and didn't give them any points for that because I didn't think it was that egregious. But just I mean, this is a tale as old as fucking time, right? We're dealing with old rule sets here versus new ones, and the way that impacts how everyone involved approaches these situations is just such a weird thing for any athlete to have to deal with, right? Like, imagine if because we're at M&T Bank Stadium this week, the Chiefs have to consider a new offsides penalty that didn't exist. It's just fucking strange and changes the way I would imagine each fighter is just probably shitting themselves knowing like, hey, I'm not confident that I know what I'm supposed to be doing because I'm used to the new rules. I fought in Vegas the majority of my career. Now we're here in Canada and we're using the old rules. It's just such a weird predicament to be in, I'm sure, as a ref and as a fighter. So I didn't like Arnold being a little bit checked out in this one. I thought if he stuck to his game plan and played the matador a little bit more, I think he was the slicker guy out there, and I think he could have started to make Mufsar a little tired. But man, that guy's a tank. I love his grappling upside and ability. And I think both of these guys are going to have a bright future no matter what. I just think um, very similar to other TriStar fighters, Rory McDonald comes to mind. I feel like the because of how well-rounded he is, sometimes when you end up in these positions where you don't want to be in, you might think you're in less danger than you are. But in reality, that clock keeps ticking. And before you know it, you've been controlled for the majority of the round. And you're looking up wondering, well, how the fuck did we get here? So more urgency in situations, in situational spots of the fight, I think could have changed this for Arnold Allen. But um, hell of a third round, right? That third round was exciting as hell. And seeing Mofsar grit through those moments and still come out and getting the back two in that sequence at the end there. I just love watching Mofsar fight, and I think he deserves a title shot sooner than later. I know that might be a hot take considering who's he's fought and how everyone claims he's the worst fighter in the world and he's the scourge on the division. This guy's fights are not boring, bro. This round one was hella exciting for me, and there's so much to take in. So uh, just say you're casual, right? If you don't like these wrestling exchanges, just say it, baby. It's okay. But next up, we've got Chris Curtis, the whiner himself, winning via split decision 30-27 times two and 28-29 to Marc Andre Berrieux. Um, no matter how I try to look at this fight, god damn it, this is a Chris Curtis fight. I don't know what's going on with these split decisions and these refs, but surprisingly, a lot of media members also saw it Marc Andre Barrios' way. Um, Always weird when you see a three to nothing and then a 2-1 in the opposite direction. But the rounds were close enough that I guess it's justifiable. But I thought it was pretty clear that Chris won this one. How did you feel about this middleweight one?
Yeah, same thing. I actually had a 2-1 Curtis, which is I don't think what any judge
Nobody
ended up
would have.
having. So I thought Mark had done enough. I think it was I don't remember if it was round two. I think it was round two. But I think I had it that Mark had won round two, but I felt like we were fighting Chris Curtis's usual fight. Like a little slower, but I felt like it was the same thing. Like we were playing his game
Mhm.
and Chris Curtis didn't disappoint. Like yeah, it wasn't the greatest, fights of all time that we were, we're used to seeing from Chris Curtis, where it's just an absolute brawl and someone's getting put to sleep, and it's one of those we keep talking about. But it was still a good fight, and I felt like Marc Andre was fighting Chris's fight, which was I don't know if that was part of the game plan or like outstrike him. Oh, I'll beat him. Don't worry, I'll put him down or whatever. But another one where it wasn't what the fans of Canada and what whoever bought that pay-per-view were looking for after what we just saw to start the main card. And I felt like it just kept stacking up to like people weren't happy with what this main card was
Because this
meant to
card
be.
sucked. I told y'all
Yeah.
motherfuckers last week. This card is trash. And look, what did it deliver? Hot fucking garbage. I'm sorry. I got out of
No,
hand.
no, and you know what? I'm glad that you said that because it really was, and you said it. I said, to start it, that we talked about this off air, that I was more interested in the prospects and the prelims than I was really, except for obviously the Strickland fight. I was looking forward to that fight, but everything else I was, and the Arnold Allen fight, but everything else I did not really care about. Like it doesn't. None of those three fights between, and even the title fight, the women's title fight, the Magny fight, and the Chris
We're
Curtis
getting
fight
there. We're
don't.
getting there.
Yeah, those three don't change my or the UFC, radar, or they don't move the needle at this moment in time. It's all three of those fights are like kind of, if the card was stronger, those would be like the first fight on the prelims. Like those aren't main card fights, and I think people got a rude awakening to that, especially the casuals who just buy every pay-per-view. But I think it was just one of those where people realized really quickly that once the Allen fight didn't work out as what they wanted, that this was going to be a long night for the main card. And like I said, I thought Chris Curtis fought his fight, and I think he won. I didn't think he won 3-0, definitely not, but I definitely thought he won the fight because it was his fight.
Yeah, and somehow he still finds a way to argue with someone after this one too, calling out
Of
Dominic
course.
Cruz for his commentary, and it's like, man, you two are built for each other. To be honest, we should have a death show with just Dominic Cruz and Chris Curtis, and we might average 3 fights a year, right? We might get 3 death fights a year if those two were sitting there. But next up, because we need to move on. God damn it. Neil Magny wins via TKO ground and pound at 4:45 of round 3 versus Mike Malott. If you ask me, this fight was 1,000% thrown by Mike Malott, like 10,000% thrown by Mike Malott. Um, the ease at which he picked them apart for rounds 1 and 2. I thought this was a certainty, so much so that I left my goddamn room. And when I came back, Mike Malott was looking up at the fucking ceiling, brother. What a strange turn of events here. I still feel to this moment that, with all due respect, Neil Magny looked just a shot like we said he looked, but somehow it felt like Mike just didn't push the pace late at all enough for him to gas out the way he did. And obviously, him being gassy was something that was noted before this fight. But it just felt so strange to me that you are controlling a fight. It's not like he was necessarily going all out and throwing punches the way he typically does. He controlled the fight and almost, you could tell, took a lot of pointers from Ian Machado Gary's game plan of how to pick apart Neil Magny from the outside as the smaller fighter, I might add. Um, and to see him sort of implode, this was Neil Magny via suicide. If you ask me, this was not Neil Magny looking amazing and mounting this comeback. I thought even in the flurry that led up to these moments, it kind of was like Neil Magny was like, "Oh shit, it's working. All right, fuck it." Like it didn't seem like he was doing anything special to bring about this moment, which made it feel even more stale for me when I watched it back. But how did you feel about Mike Malott absolutely shitting the poutine right in front of the Canadian fans?
Uh, oh, bro, I think you described it as best as you could there. I felt like it was one sided those first two rounds. I felt it almost felt like exactly kind of what we talked about in the preview show that we just that where a fighter was clearly it seemed like he's not himself anymore. This time was coming. Like, and I'm like I said to you in the previous show, I'm not a fan of Mike Malott like that. Like, yeah, I'm a fan of him as a fighter, but I'm not a fan of like believing that he's gonna be something like one of these top guys. And I thought another one where this is your co-main, like it just tells you what all you needed to know. But I wasn't too big on Mike. I felt like he could have finished this if he really put all his pressure, all everything he had into that first round. I felt like he could have finished Neil there. Like even in round two as well, where the leg kicks were working, he was landing the straight right hand. You know, he was pushing Magny to the back of the cage. You know, had the clinch game, was getting the takedowns. It just felt like Magny was clearly a step slow. You felt like we were seeing the same thing where we saw, like you just said, actually with Ian Gary, where it was just it wasn't. We're watching a fight, but we're watching one fighter pick apart another, and it wasn't as drastic as the Ian Gary one. But I felt like this was going to be clearly Mike's fight to lose. And then same thing in round three, though. You know, like round three, Mike was doing it again. Another takedown had him. And then all of a sudden, it just felt like, you know, Magny got up and then he took him down. And you just saw him get Magny to the mat. I mean, Mike to the mat. And then all of a sudden, it just the ground and pound TKO. It's just like I never saw that. I never saw Mike just fold like that. I was like, I couldn't believe that was it. Like he got taken down and finally was put on his back, and then it ended in like an instant. Like it felt like Magny had completely taken over. Like he had saved all his powers for those final 30 seconds. Like I was watching some Dragon Ball Z fucking movie. Like it was, you know, he's getting his ass kicked, and then all of a sudden at the end he waits for the final moments to secure the victory. And I there's no winner in that fight for me because I'll ask you this: what does this mean for Neil Magny now? Like, and what does this even mean for Mike Malott? Like, what the hell happens now? That it's an absolute lose for the UFC here and for everybody. Like, I don't get what the future holds for either of them.
Hey, I like having Mike Malott on my dynasty team because I know they're gonna give him an easy fight next. Like that's why I'm happy here. I know they want their Canadian son to look amazing next to the fucking Lake Michigan River. I think hands down, bro. This is Lake Michigan River. What the fuck am I saying, bro? Next to Lake Michigan, bro. Just end
I
me, bro.
like
Just
that, the
end me
Lake
right now.
Michigan River. I'm calling it
Uh,
that now.
we love it. We love it. Um, yeah, I don't know what happens for Neil Magny here moving forward. I think he might want to consider going up to middleweight because what think about this, what he has known for in his reign in the UFC is being that steady Eddie guy, but also being someone that will pressure you. It feels like he can't, like his body can't hold up to that. Like he has no answers for these guys early at all. And in round three, it's like, all right, let's hope you self destruct. Because if you don't, it's not like I'm putting a pace on you to make you fold. Like you have to fold yourself into the laundry. If not, there is no manual wash and fold service here, brother. So I don't know what's going on. I think honestly, Neil Magny is never gonna be out of a UFC job. Like as long as he's gonna be fighting, he'll probably be here because I don't see him going on a Tony Ferguson like streak just because once he ends up losing enough, he'll end up fighting someone like this that's very flawed and eventually might find its way into a banana peel. But like you said, if you match these guys up against people that we know are really in the top 15, I don't think either of these guys are coming out on the right side of that one. So definitely a fight that leaves a weird taste in your mouth because you're like, yeah, you won, but did you really? Did you really? That's the question.
Exactly.
And we got another one that's just like that to talk
Yep.
about a women's bantamweight title because this was a title fight that we watched. Yes, it was. Raquel
This was
Pennington
the title fight.
wins via unanimous decision 49-46 times 2 and 49-45. Got a 10-8 there in that fifth and final round versus Maida Bueno Silva. This was a fucking terrible performance from Shitara, and this was one that I kind of was sad that I also didn't pull the trigger on because I was like, man, I could see this exact. I think I said it. I could see this exact thing happening where after round two is just all downhill, and this fight was one of the more painful experiences of me being a fan of this sport because not only was it a very slow, boring fight, but it also was a frustrating fight because it just felt like Maida Bueno Silva wasn't willing to do the things she needs to do to be herself. Uh, having a fucking once again an implosion, right? A self destruction right in front of our eyes, and Rocky Pennington just did everything she had to do to get the win. We don't have to talk about this one much more, right?
No, I was actually hoping that you would talk about it all while this train was going by. That's how much I was looking as interested as I was going into this podcast about this fight. This I I can't believe this was a title fight. I got to the end of it, and I'm seeing Rocky Pennington get the belt, and I'm just looking. I'm like, I think if Dana had a choice here, he would just walk away with the belt. Like he'd just be like, "Forget it. It's no longer a title fight. I don't care, and you all lose." Like it's just. I did like obviously Pennington. I felt Pennington won 4 out of 5, and I did like what she was doing. I felt like it was such a grapple game from Bueno Silva. It was like I'm assuming that was the game plan. And like I don't want to keep talking about this, but I felt like that was the game plan or attempted game plan, and it's just man, that was so opposite of what I thought Bueno Silva was going to do after that second round. I really thought for a good hot second that Bueno Silva was going to win those first 3 rounds and then maybe slow down.
Mm-hmm.
But God damn, what the fuck was that? That was horrible. That was horrible. This is what I mean. This is why I need Ronda to come back. just just to
Yo,
stop that. Like,
the
come
absolute
on now.
state
Like,
of this division that we're talking about Ronda Rousey, we need you. Given how dearth she looked in her fucking last couple of fights, you know who we really need? Amanda Nunes. Please come back. We miss
oh,
you.
I thought you were gonna say
You are
Pena,
missed.
man. I know how much you love
Oh no,
Pena,
no,
you know.
please. Yeah. We're gonna get to hear Juliana Pena and Kayla Harrison at a press conference sometime down the line in the future, and it's just gonna be the most cringe thing we get to see anyway. So while we're speaking about that, where do we see the bantamweight division heading? Obviously, UFC 300. We got the newly
Oh,
signed Kayla Harrison going up against Sean's favorite fighter on the roster, Holly
God damn
motherfucking
it.
Kia Home. Um, where do we see the bantamweight division going? Right, obviously Rocky Pennington is the champ right now. Who do you see as the next contender, so to speak? Because I would imagine that this belt should be defended either sometime before or right after UFC 300. So who is
Oh
getting
boy.
this next shot? It's got to be
If this fight's
Juliana,
on
right?
UFC 300, I'm never watching UFC again. I'm telling you right now. I'm just telling you. It's gonna be Pena. This is what I think is gonna happen. It's
Mhm.
gonna be Pena next. Pena beats Pennington. Pennington retires. Pena. Hopefully,
I
this is
picked
how I
Pennington
see
in
it
that
going.
fight, which is
Yeah,
hilarious.
I hope so, but I just see a weird
I hope so.
scenario here where Pena wins. You see something where they're trying everything they can to get Nunez to come back one final time, to finish the trilogy, to answer all the questions. They can hype up that division one final time, And then, maybe she comes back and then she'll win, obviously. And then if they don't do that, then I really do think, and I said this when we talked about this, like, 6 months ago or so. We talked about this a long time ago, but I still believe Ketlin Vieira is the answer at this division. I know that she lost to Pennington, and I was actually really surprised by that, but I still think she's the future champion at this division. I think her and Aldana could compete again and might fight for a title down the line. I hope I never see Holly Holm in a title fight. But this whole division's very slow right now. We're still waiting on a lot of these prospects to come up. They're not, ranked yet, or they're just getting into the rankings. But this division is as brutal as it comes. When you're throwing these two as a title fight for a vacant belt, you couldn't ask for worse. That might have been, like, names wise, the worst names you could have put for a hype fight. Like, if you were trying to hype up this card and you're like, hey, we got 2 title fights, here they are. Like, you would be like, what the if you showed that card, main and co-main, 2 years ago or even a year ago, people were like, what has happened to the UFC? What is going on? This looks like Bellator names. Well, how is Strickland a champion? How is Dricus fighting for it? What happened on Adesanya? How are we getting Bueno Silva versus Pennington? What the fuck is happening? So I think it's Pena next, and then Vieira. Unless Nunez comes back, and then she'll obliterate Pena and Pena, whatever happens to her, whatever. But then I think if it's Vieira's division for a short time period before the Brazilians and there's a lot of young prospects that I think are better than the ranked people now, but still need to blossom.
Really, really, name me one.
Do I have to? Do I have to bring up the list? Do I? I don't want to.
That's my point. That's my point.
I do think the prospects are better.
We'll move on.
I just don't want to get into this list now of comparing a prospect to fucking Carol Rosa or, a Norma Dumont or Dumas, whatever it is. Like, it's the division sucks, but I think
so featherweight's gone, right? That's the only thing that I have gotten confirmed here. Featherweight is done. That's the only thing that is clear to me after this, because if they're making poor Kayla Harrison lose every single ounce of muscle that she has,
that's what I wanted to ask you. Is how is she gonna make that?
And it makes sense, honestly, bro. You know what they should do? Fuck 135. Just make it women's heavyweight. Make it you can weigh whatever the fuck you want. Like literally, make it you can weigh whatever you want as long as it's under 205. Boom. Like, because that's the only way this would be entertaining, because then people like, I don't know, people from other divisions could come. I could see Aaron Blanchfield fighting in women's heavyweight and having just have some fun there, right? There's some things we could imagine. What the fuck? We could have the Amazon woman and the return of the absolutely roided to the gills look on some of these ladies. Like, why not? I don't think it makes.
You really think Kayla's gonna make 135, bro?
Hell no. That's what I'm saying. We make this women's heavyweight, and then we solve all the problems. But we already talked about this way too long, bro. Way too fucking long. Next up, another controversial fight, a middleweight fight. So I'm gonna start by asking you, Sean, how did you score this fight? And how
I scored it exactly how it went.
The whole.
You know what? I'm disappointed because I wanted Strickland to win, and as I don't play favorites in any sort of capacity, but it was just one of those moments where I was just waiting for Strickland to, like, get the fire and just go for it all. And I felt like that. I felt like he had done that in round 1, but I really did feel 2, 3, and 4 went to Dricus, and in round 5 when I always forget the coach. What's Sean Strickland's coach's name?
Eric Nixon.
Thank you. When Eric was telling him, like, you need to fight, like, get that little kid, energy or whatever he said out of you right here, right now. Like, I felt Sean believed in that, and I felt Sean won that 5th round. But I think it was round 3. Yeah, and I think it was round 3, which was the most questionable. I think Sean had done more, but I think because of the head-to-head clash and the fact that Sean got bloodied, and I think that was Dominic Cruz's big talking point the entire time was, oh, the damage. Oh, look, he's, Strickland's bloody. Dricus is, but Dricus, the thing is, people like, it's amazing that Cruz was saying that as if like, yeah, Strickland was bloodied up, off the clash of the heads and whatever you want to say, but Driscus's whole face was rearranged. Like he looked bruised and messed up in like round two. Like you
Yep.
saw his face rearranged, and like Sean's jab was working great. I think it was Sean's downfall was his inability to defend the takedown. Like he couldn't stop a takedown to save his life. So it just looked like we were fighting Driscus's fight, and so Sean could get his way out of it. And then like we were waiting for Sean to make it his fight, but he just couldn't get comfortable. And Driscus is so like unorthodox, so weird in his stance, and I think it just made Sean uncomfortable until like the end of round four, and then he really started to like get comfortable again. But I felt like it was, if that fight went another round, I think Sean potentially could have finished him and even won that belt back. But I think Sean started off strong, but Triscus took over those middle rounds, and then it was too late for Sean to make that comeback round wise, and I had it 3-2 Triscus, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was super convinced watching this fight that it was Sean Strickland 125. And
Mm,
when looking at it back, I think the argument is there for sure. What you said was spot on though. Round 3 is the round that really hinges on things because
yeah.
round two, if there's any person that got robbed in this fight, right? Because it's a close enough fight. The only person that got robbed in this fight, though, it's Sean Strickland in round 2. And the reason why I say that is because if any round has made it more clear to me that it's way better to be the offensive fighter that isn't landing anything than it is to be the defensive fighter, blocking and parrying everything while landing your own shots, for some reason, just because Dricus was coming forward and pressing those buttons on the controller, right? It didn't matter that Sean Strickland was parrying every single punch thrown at his way and then countering him with jabs over the top. That round was a clear Sean Strickland round. You cannot convince me otherwise. And people
Yeah.
tell me all the time, "Oh, what?" Honestly, you could debate round 1 more than you could debate round 2, and I thought round 1 was pretty clearly Sean's round. So
Yep.
I personally did end up feeling like Sean Strickland won this fight, but watching it back, I was pleasantly surprised by exactly what you just said. Dricus just did enough mixing it up, and the pressure. Funny enough, Sean was blocking every single one of his leg kicks, but the threat
Hmm.
of the kicks made the takedown so easy. Like every single time, it felt like he wasn't even defending the shot, because he just had too many things to worry about. And Dricus has an awkward style, man. He does a lot of weird shit that you wouldn't probably recommend, but the end of the day, it's fucking effective. And if you're the guy that's putting more stuff out there, even if it's not landing, goddamn it, you're gonna get rewarded for it. So I agree with you though. I think if anyone lost this fight, it's 100% Sean Strickland in round 3 and 4. I just felt like he just kind of got lost there in the mix of the fight. And like you said, it took a lot from Eric Nixick to wake him up, so that he even had a
Yep.
chance in the fifth. But just another strange fight. I
Yeah.
thought neither guy was effective enough to what to time way more output, and that's what they score, right? They score aggression and damage, and god damn it, there was a cut on Sean Strickland's eye.
Damage. Well, that's the thing. Do you? I haven't watched the replay of that. Was the bloodied eye from the headbutt,
So
or was it from an actual
there
cut?
was a punch that connected that cut Sean in that spot before the headbutt, but the headbutt certainly made that cut way bigger. Like it was
Okay.
relatively close in succession. So you could see the cut open initially and then it get bigger after that. So I get the complaints, but at the same time too, say whatever you want about not being able to see or whatever the case may be. At the end of the day, you still, I mean, no matter what, You're in there as a fighter. You're expected to perform as one, and he did. I'm not saying he wilted after the cut. It's just so weird to hear someone that always talks about the poor excuses of men to always have a fucking excuse when it comes to the reasons why this happened. When in reality, you can't see that. God damn it, I should have been doing more. He lost this fight certainly, even though I think the judges are wrong for round two. I thought Sean Strickland's passivity forced him to get the L here. But middleweight is an interesting division. There's
That's
rumors
what I was about to bring up.
we might even get another middleweight title fight at UFC 300. How do you
Hmm.
think? I mean, I just got to say this. Fuck it. We already know what the matchup is. Adesanya versus Dricus probably going to headline UFC 300. We saw Adesanya boxing in Mexico. He's dialed in, ready to make his run. Who do you have in that Dricus versus Adesanya fight that feels inevitable at this point?
Adesanya. I think I
By
think
knockout.
Adesanya wins this one.
By knockout?
Oh yeah,
What you feeling?
yeah,
Right?
yeah. I think Adesanya by knockout. I
I
think
think
this is what
another
Adesanya needed in the first place. An actual layoff, like 6 months. Take what every champion takes this much time, unless you're Islam. You take like 9 months. Like this is just what he needed. That Adesanya was fighting 3 times a year. So
for like six
he's
years
like,
straight. Yeah.
yeah, so this was good. Like he needed to get his body back, and like this was fine. So obviously the Sean Strickland fight didn't go as he planned, but it was almost like it almost worked out perfectly. Like now he gets to fight Triscus in the opportunity, what was supposed to happen, except now the bell is on the other person. So it makes Adesanya that much more compelled to get his belt back. The fact that he made this rivalry from Africa, South Africa, and all that, and now he's fighting the guy who got the belt around him, and now he wants it. Like it's not like it's another title defense. I've already beaten everyone. Who else is out there? This is I want my belt back, and now he's got it. I got to take it. So this is going to be a good fight. I really do think so. And then I also think that it sets up a lot of fights. I think this sets up this one. Obviously, we already know about Paula versus Whitaker, which probably won't happen because something will happen to Costa. And then I think this also sets up Strickland versus Hamzat. I really do. I think that's the next fight. And I think that gives Hamzat the immediate fight versus Adesanya next, or Driscus, whoever wins that one. And I think you know, I saw Hamza talk about this, and I don't mean to make this like a talking point, but Hamzat's all upset that he was promised the title fight and he was promised next, and he still hasn't fought anyone in this division, but he's supposed to be next. You fought Usman on like 4 days' notice, and if that fight went another round, or even if that fight was 5 rounds, you would have lost. But I guess that gets you the first title. But then you got hurt, so the division moves on without you. It's not gonna be like, hey, you're hurt. We'll wait 8 months for you. Like we're gonna move forward here, and the champions change hands. So now it changed hands twice since you've beat Usman. So it's we can't wait for you now. Now you have to earn it again. So why don't you beat a former champion again with Strickland, and then you'll face whoever wins. So I think that's the next 3 fights at the top 5 of this division, or top 6 in this division, and it. I know Vittori's fighting someone, and I can't remember. I don't really care what Vittori does. I think Vittori had 2 chances at the title. He failed both times miserably. I don't care. If Adesanya is the champion there, he'll never get a shot again. But I think that the division, we know what's happening with it, and definitely going to be interesting. And same thing with, I wonder if Adesanya wins, is Pereira a factor at this point? Do they try to make that fight one final time, either at middleweight or light heavyweight? And I honestly, I honestly don't know. I still question to this moment, why was Pereira in this corner? That dude was behind the cage, didn't say a word. He was like a celebrity cornerman. Like, yeah, he's great and whatever, but he doesn't speak a lick of
David
English,
Goggins was
and,
better. God damn it.
and he was just sitting there on the cage, just because he doesn't know, he
Trauma.
can't talk to Sean. So
Right.
I don't know if it was an intimidation factor, but regardless, there's some interesting moments here that's going to happen in this division. I don't know what the future holds for this division after those three fights, but at least we know for 2024, we know exactly what the blueprint is.
Holy shit. Yeah. I'm done. I've got the heebie-jeebies. I got a weird taste in my mouth. This card sucked, and both of our picks sucked. I went 4-8 for the night, while Sean was doing so well right behind me. He went 3-9. So our totals on the year is now 11-12 for myself, inching closer to the inevitable tie ranking we're going to end up with at the end of the season. While Sean is sitting, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can tell, I'm efforting to get back up the document right now. This is the life we live here with recording beautiful things with the internet. God damn it! Um, and Sean is sitting after that 3-9 performance at 12-11. So he is still currently leading by 1 point in the head to head picks, but we're both doing
Jesus.
atrocious. And as far as Dynasty went, I went 0-4 last week, while Sean went 2-2. So for the season, I'm sitting at 4-7, while Sean is sitting at 6-4. That brings our lifetime Dynasty rankings to 51 wins and 29 losses, 2 draws, 1 no contest for me, while Sean is sitting at 52 wins, 34 losses, 1 draw, 1 no contest, making our winning percentage 61.45 for me
This guy's
and
going winning percentage now. That's all good.
59.09 for Sean. So I'm still currently in the lead despite being now behind in the
Here we
winning
go.
category. But I already mentioned to you that we're going to be doing this. So don't act like I'm trying to fucking screw you here.
Now all
You
of a
have
sudden
more
I got an
L's.
extra win, and all of a sudden there's percentages now. This
I
guy
mean,
can't take the L. All right, it's
you
all
have
good.
6 extra L's. Speaking of taking the L, so the only way we can accurately reference this is by bringing up the percentage. And I think what's
Uh-huh.
really cool about the calculator I use as well is it factors in win percentage variables that aren't losses as well. So
Mm.
gives us an accurate representation of what that percentage is as far as what we're actually winning and losing here. So
Hey, regardless, I'm catching up. I'm getting there. This was a big week for
no,
me.
you're
As
not.
much as an L we all took in this card, and fighting, watching it, every ounce of it was an L. Everything sucked, but I'll take those 2 wins in Dynasty. That was my big win. I need to catch up to you, and then I know the winning percentage is going to be a thing now, so I got to just get there. I
Here we
think,
go.
like I said, I think it'll even out because my fighters fought a lot at the end of 2023. I think your fighters will now come in early 2024. They'll take some L's, and then I could take over in both the picks and in Dynasty, and then
Wishful thinking.
like
This absolute Scrooge.
Pereira, the Adesanya moment. Come to daddy.
Look at this guy. Come to daddy. This man has been struggling all for 2+ years. And now all of a sudden he gets one good week. Now he's feeling himself. I can't wait.
Yes,
Next week.
absolutely.
You know what's the best part though? We talked about all the L's we took individually. You know who else took an L? The collective UFC fan base. Because not only did we
Oh,
get
for
this
sure.
shitty card, but guess what, brother? Guess what? It's that time of the year. Pack light because hell is hot, baby. We've got 2 Hellscape cards coming at us for the next 2 weeks. So
Oh,
nothing but beautiful sounds of everybody in the hollowed halls of the Apex in Las Vegas. So make sure
oh
you
yeah.
pack light. Hell is hot. But most importantly, don't forget that, god damn it, no matter how good we think we got it this year, we're still gonna end up with some shitty motherfucking cards. And just like that, god damn it, 297 is in the books. We have one fighter. Look, I'll give you a little sneak preview for our UFC Hellscape preview next week. There's only one fighter that is already drafted on this card. Sean, may I have you garner a guess without looking up anything about this fight card? Who is the magical fighter that has already been drafted? Can you tell me this, Sean?
Oh, have we taken Imavov?
No. I was surprised to see
Wow,
that as well.
that is a surprise. Well, I know who you're taking in the first pick.
Hey, as long as you
Uh,
know who has it, this guy right
I know
here.
you have it because I had it last year. I mean, last week. So,
I mean, you already gave up your guess. I give you
who
one
is it?
more.
Yeah, who
I
is
give
it?
you one more.
Who
I give
is
you
it?
one more. Go ahead.
God damn. I'm looking, I'm thinking. I know who's the first two.
I'll give you the weight
I
class.
don't think so.
155. 155. Lightweight.
Oh my god! So is it actually? I was gonna say I don't think it's him because who would pick him? But is it Drew Dober?
Why, yes, it is Drew Dober, and who would pick him?
Oh,
It's this guy right here. So
that's
interesting
right.
to
All
see
right,
how that all plays out.
I need that.
But we're done. We're through. We'll catch you guys maybe next fucking time. But make sure I might rock a speedo next episode because, like I said, hell
Please
is
do.
hot, and it's time to go back to the skate, baby. We'll see you guys next week. Until then, go fuck yourself. Peace.